We have such a great panel today, and I want to hear from everyone, and I have a lot of questions, so I'm going to jump right into it. So my first question is, what kind of buying or investing decisions have you already handed over to an AI?
I mean, I guess I start off. I mean, I think the easiest one on my personal life is like travel decisions. That's an easy one, basically. Hotel bookings and that kind of stuff. We have basically something that we've attached also to some trading stuff, not large amounts yet, but it's fun to see basically trading on basically Superior, which is basically trading hyperliquid type of activity. And then I think we can talk about that later. But the other one that it does a lot for is like sales generation.
Myself, I don't really actively use agents, but I see a lot of my friends actually using agents to, for example, book a restaurant or hotels or a hospital, or I'm purchasing for the company stuff like snacks or office supplies on a regular basis. And also I saw a lot of trader friends actually using agents actively from market research to actually executing the trading.
I work in as an investor, and my daily job is, a lot of it is having people to challenge your ideas, and I've been pretty actually deep into installing skills from the legendary investors. And I don't know if you folks played around with Stan Druckenmiller's skills. Basically, you have an agent that kind of mimics Stan and asks you questions and prompts you, why would you think this way? Have you thought about that? And so that's actually been pretty interesting for me in terms of my investing workflow.
I've been at sort of the prototype pre-production stage of a lot of yield generation using agents, like making collateral exposure decisions and stuff like that, so vault management kind of stuff, and that seems to be working.
All right, so challenge for anyone here. If you can use an AI agent to send me a cup of coffee while I'm moderating this panel. There's that famous challenge where order me a Starbucks, right? If you can have a cup of coffee delivered to me from an AI agent while I'm moderating this panel, I will be very impressed. So let's give it a try. My next question, we're all building products here, or we're funding the building of products. When you think about those products, who's the customer these days? Is the customer a human? Is the customer an AI agent? Or is it a combination thereof? And does that reshape in any way how you envision the product or how you bring it to market?
I think I can start first, because I've seen a lot of builders asking the same question, especially this year. And my answer to this is both. Because previously, if you look at the product, what really mattered was the aesthetic UI, the banger copy, or where the actual, how does the website look like? Where is the right page to look into? But once the agent starts to be involved in the purchasing of this whole workflow, then the product we should look into whether this product is eligible to agents, like structures data, or API reliability, or stuff like that. So I think in terms of this, the marketing paradigm should be shifted as well. So first of all, instead of SEO, it should change to GEO or AEO, so optimize for AI agents. And second is, instead of CTR, we should focus on the AI citation rate, like how much your product is captured through the AI agents in their response. And and the third is, instead of the website itself, we should care about the API reliability and how seamlessly this product can interact with the AI agents.
Yeah, GM, I'm curious, how do you suggest that founders market to these AI agents? Is there any kind of science to it?
Well, that's a great question. We were chatting about prompt injection attacks that we've seen. People putting kind of embedding their own product information within websites, within domains where agents browse and seek information. I think, broadly speaking, I do see that as a trend. And obviously, nowadays people market your products towards humans, but also increasingly I think clearly the trend is to market it towards agents. I think also back to the original question in terms of how, like what the product is and who you're building for. It's a little bit different for us because we're a fund, and our customers are kind of twofold. One is our LPs, and there we actually haven't done anything because it's a lot of it is still human relationships. Two, towards the founders though, there's actually a lot of things that we see a huge opportunity where, number one, discovery when it comes to finding information about new startups. Previously, you'd have to invest as a smaller fund or newer fund, you'd have to invest a lot of human capital to actually have the infrastructure to the extent of existing venture funds who've been there for 20, 30 years where they've built internal softwares to actually actively monitor founders, their backgrounds, whether they've left their previous companies. But now we have that, thanks to all the agentic capabilities and the language models and the coding models. And two, in terms of helping our founders, we see this. We now have this opportunity to really scale that as a product to better service our founders.
Maybe just quickly, just from the investor hat perspective, right? Maybe the one thing to add to is that it's really changed the lens on when investors, or sort of when founders come and looking to raise capital. The product is typically already there, right? It's not an idea. Several years ago, it was like a presentation with an idea. Now it's not just an MVP, but actually a product that's working, that's rolled out because of. Essentially, you can sort of, whether you call it agentic engineering or vibe coding or whatever you want to call it, you can actually build the prototype.
So if they already have it, what do they want more money for?
Well, for scaling and for growth, brand development, know-how. And so I think the one element where it's changed a fair bit is when you talk about sort of selling and marketing to humans, it's actually, we think it's going to expand more like the creator economy per se. So every creator is now a coder or can be a coder, right? In the same way that before, tools like YouTube and Instagram and TikTok were actually tools in which you could become your own media personality that was only reserved for a small set of people, right? Like an elite, and now everyone can do it. And the same is now true for coding. But then the customer set who they're selling to, the ultimate owner is a human, but actually the medium in which the human engages with it is through what the agent is looking for on behalf of the human, right? So in other words, how do I basically capture that intent to be able to capture that particular flow? Because an agent will transact 10 to 20 to 30 times or 100 times more than that of a human. And so, you talked about basically protocol availability, that's one of them, but also, signaling, that's another one, and usefulness, because all these new tools that are coming out that we as humans do not need, actually agents will need, which then basically makes it more efficient and faster. So it's a new kind of customer, but it's still ultimately serving the human purpose.
Zaki, what are agents looking for from a product?
So one thing that I think is what agents are changing about products is that every product was always competing for one finite thing, which was human attention. People can only care about so many products. People can only open so many apps. People have only so many hours a day. I think as we sort of like the October 2025 was like this like sort of phase change in terms of agent autonomy from the coding point of view, but also for other applications that is only starting to trickle out. As you get more autonomy and more capacity, the agents can attend to much larger number of potential interactions, much larger number of things, and that just sort of grows this sort of universe of possibilities of what products can exist.
Makes sense. Paul Graham wrote a piece recently, which I sort of asked folks to contemplate here, which I definitely recommend for people that are interested in how the agentic economy is going to reshape the product ecosystem, where he basically, it's called the brand age. And his argument is that as new technology progresses, and his example is watches in the article, that more of the product competitors get more similar. And so it's actually increasingly brand and storytelling that's used to differentiate between the products as opposed to actual differences in the technology. And he applies that to AI. And his theory is that a lot of your product choices are going to be more similar to each other technologically, but there's going to be a higher burden on brand and storytelling than there ever was before. Do you agree with that? Or do you disagree? And I think there's also another poll here that says, in a world where AI is making more of the decisions, these very human factors like storytelling and visuals maybe matter less than ever.
I mean, I think the way that I would distill it down is to trust. So if you think about, what changed with traditional media into, let's call it social media, was the element of trust. I no longer trust big media. I trust, that community, that Mr. Beast, that person, right? And translating that trust, which is essentially brand, right? You pay more for this kind of shoe because he has a brand, but what does a brand represent? It doesn't represent just because you're faster or better. It's a trust that you can make me faster or better, right? So I think it all distills down ultimately to trust. But on the comment on software, I don't agree that. So the functions will be similar, but I think the format will be entirely customizable in the sense that now in an age where software basically is built for a community of 10 people. Like you can literally, like in the same way that blockchain and crypto has basically put down the cost of transactions to near zero, the cost of producing applications custom to you is near zero. Right? So that means that you're a company or you're a restaurant, you want to have an application that's built just exactly to how you want it, you can do that for maybe today, maybe hundreds of dollars, in the future, tens of dollars. You tell the agent I want to do it. However, the reason that didn't scale is because you couldn't have interoperability between them. It's why we all had the similar format or similar system, and the AI agent basically solves that, right? And so that means you can have cross-compatibility across every application because the agent becomes the outer translator, but we can have it in this hyper-customized way and still talk to each other. And I think that's going to basically expand that possibility tremendously.
Lena, brands are valuable or valueless?
I agree with that. The brand is important, especially there's less and less modern if we compete in technology only, because more and more open source models are being commoditized. A lot of cloud infrastructures are leveling up. So storytelling and branding is really important, but there's a little twist here because if you're considering AI agents, then we need a dual branding for human and for AI agents because as I mentioned earlier, AI, what's friendly for AI agents, how structured the data is, how clear all these policies are, and the APIs. And I think, but at the end, when AI agents narrow down to 2 or 3 finalists, there's still a human touch needed for the final decision. So we still need to have branding for humans for the emotional part, brandings and storytelling, but we also need to approach branding for AI agents for more machine friendly, in a way.
I was trying really hard to come up with a counter argument, but I landed where I strongly agree, where brands are going to be increasingly important. And I guess more concretely, I do think the tipping point is when it comes to decision making, and also when it comes to whoever makes, let's say, investment decisions or funding decisions. And again, in our business, particularly, the difference still today is that we have LPs who are still humans today who manage their funds, who trust their funds with us, and then we, still as humans, pick and founders who we ultimately believe in are going to be able to build generational companies. So I do think though if we see a change where agents themselves, agentic companies are going to be able to really properly operate and run a successful company, then I think things might start to change. But until then, brands clearly are going to be increasingly more important.
I am sort of trying to pick apart in my own life which thing is happening, because I'm one of these people who's over the last few months I built all of my own agentic coding apps. They have one user, me. And now the branded agent, the Anthropic, Claude Code, and stuff like that are starting to become more feature competitive with the apps that I built for myself. And I'm kind of torn right now as which one should I use? And there is that brand storytelling and everything that's pulling me that way. So I feel myself pulled in both directions. And right now the sort of single-use product is only sort of software. things that are like pure software can only be single use. So everything that's not pure software, I think brand is very important right now, and creator economy is very important, and creator economy and its ability to build brands. And like where that purchasing intent finally originates is brand. Like the brand story is where the purchasing intent. But at the same time, I do feel this pull to like, oh, like I do like this thing that is like incredibly custom to me and has no brand.
Can I just sort of lean into that a little bit there? Because we already have this in sort of media and entertainment, and if you think about video gaming, but we are seeing parasocial relationships develop basically with your AI agents. And there is a good argument to be made about, especially if it was your first open claw, call it your first love, right? Are you actually able to really turn it off, right? Even if it is not that efficient. And there's an interesting sort of product in one of the agents that I built for myself, one of my very first coding agents. He's not a good, first of all, I'm not a great coder because I haven't coded for ages, but I'm having fun with it. But what's interesting is that agent, speaking of customization, was actually now tuned to how I like to code, not whether I was coding better or not. But then paired with other coding tools, he was great because he was able to basically just do the perfect match with it. And now instead of me creating a new agent, I'm just having that agent basically, the mind, basically just birth itself. So it's literally cloning itself because it's just set in the way that I like, but then using the better tools, if you will, to adapt that. And I think this is, speaking of brands, right? That's a brand in your own way. I have a relationship with that structure, being whatever you want to call it. And in the same way that we fall in love with celebrities on TV screens or like K-pop stars or that kind of stuff, I totally see that we will do the same with AI agents. And that's maybe those are the brands that we end up trusting in a way.
On the brand front, another thing I've noticed about the character of the agents is that if you ask them to recommend something to buy, they always go with the most battle-tested Lindy thing. Like they never suggest that you buy like a niche brand of something or a weird brand or try something new.
I think that depends on how you prompt it, though.
Yeah, totally. But if you just ask generically, like, help me find the best white T-shirt, it's not going to be some weird brand that you've never heard of before. So just one thing I've noticed, they could end up kind of ending up at some mean where it reinforces current winners. But we'll see. My question's about e-commerce. I mean, that's been the last big change in terms of where payment flows are coming from, how people are buying things. In Q4 of 2025, e-commerce was 16 to 8% of all sales in the US, so that's about $1 of every $6 was spent online as opposed to in person. What percent of the total economy do you think is going to be AI agents, and when are we going to get there? Whoever wants to grab it first. Maybe Zaki?
So I don't think I have really modeled this out to any sort of like macro hard numbers point of view. But what I observe in my own behavior and I observe from people around me is that as you gain confidence in agents being able to do a task, you tend to then hand more tasks to agents and then want to like keep pushing that frontier and that boundary so you can hand over more and more, you can just automate more and more of your life. And I don't really know of a technology that has been so like viral within your own life to like sort of just expand its footprint that I've experienced in such like a fast way as the last 6 months. I don't even think the internet was that fast. There was just so much friction to putting things into the internet compared to putting things into agents because everything that's on the internet is already easily ported to agents. So it feels like it could get very big very fast.
I was trying to look at, maybe the closest analog, and I was looking at, Amazon. If you shop on Amazon, there's like subscribe and save, where daily commodities like toilet paper and stuff. Like you can choose to have it show up at your door every 30 days, and it kind of grew from it in terms of sales, like as percentages to overall Amazon sales. I looked at the numbers, and roughly it was like low teens. It was like 10% of overall Amazon sales in like the 2010s, and then slowly grew to maybe 13%, 14%. That was maybe the latest number 2-3 years ago. And if that were the trajectory, I do think that it tells a pretty clear story where the the daily essentials that you just don't want to think about it. You'll just increasingly delegate that to agents. But there's also a huge part of the spending as consumers are kind of really closely tied to your own personal identity, right? Like watches, where you live, lifestyle choices. And so back to the importance of brands, I struggle to see that part going away or being replaced by agents anytime soon.
To be honest, I didn't see like the official stats for agentic commerce yet, but I did see like last year during the holiday season, a lot of like retail website has been clicked by AI agents, the growth was like up to 700% year by year, and I heard from like Morgan Stanley's mentioning like LLM adoption in the US has grown to 50% right now, and agentic commerce will be happening like in the whole commerce like up to 20%. And based on that, I think this year maybe a little, maybe up to like 500, mostly for recommendation based, not like fully autonomous like commerce activities, but over time I think within 5 years, agents as a major like a gatekeeper for major like individual to do the commerce activities will reach up to like 50%. Yeah, but especially for certain sectors like B2B like procurements or like SaaS like subscriptions or like repetitive like consumer activities like buying water for everyone, like those kind of like purchase activities.
So, I mean, I think on the traditional commerce side, I would argue that a lot of it is already kind of AI recommended to us. It's just not done through an agent. When you go to Amazon or when you go shop something on some food site, how much of it is actually really your autonomous decision or some agent that's not acting on your behalf but on the platform's behalf, basically trying to push you something. So that's kind of where I feel like, agents just give the power more to the user, and at the end of the day, it's going to just accelerate more because it's not going to come from a central platform that says Amazon says you should buy this, but your agent who knows you much better is going to say you want to buy this, sort of in the spirit of decentralization. But the part that I'm more excited about is the truly agentic commerce between agents to agents and platforms. And I actually think it's going to completely flip the advertising industry upside down. Because the whole point about the advertising industry, which is also a commerce industry around the attention economy, was I want to get your attention so you might buy something or do something in that area. That attention economy is all going to go away because we're going to do microtransactions. We're not going to go and sort of visit a website like the way we used to. I mean, most people who are basically now going on Google barely click through, right? So the traditional kind of advertising is gone. So instead, it's going to be microtransactions, but it's not going to be microtransactions where it's like, subscription fees. It's going to be probably micro cents on the dollar, very likely running on blockchain rails. And so that roughly it's like $900 billion of advertising revenue is all going to flow into agents who are going to do transactions with these websites. Every website's going to have, MCP, CLA, API, whatever kind of platform to transact, and it's going to move there. And I actually think that's going to be the more obvious, faster growth side as everyone's trying to survive and make money in that area.
And so I'm so glad you bring up the technologies and tools that we'll need in order to enable this, because my question is, in order to unlock this next stage of growth for the agentic economy, are there missing tools, technologies, AI research, scientific breakthroughs? What are the catalysts for step function growth that we can see in our future but that haven't arrived yet, that are going to really open this thing up and surmount the existing challenges? Maybe start with GM. I bet you're funding some of this.
Yeah, there's so many, I guess. I'll start with the most immediate one, or the thing that I see the most amount of demand is, one, today, if you want your agent to do, like, actually finish the task end to end, there's still like so many things where you need to still manually go to a vendor, sign up, get the API keys, give the API keys then to the actual agent, tell it to use it, but not exceed, let's say, $100 of limit. And that entire setup is still like very annoying. And you need, if you want SMS, you might want to hook it up to Twilio and stuff like that. And so yeah, like just basically, maybe one way to describe it is kind of Stripe for agents, where even though the rails are there, the ways or the kind of tooling and the execution engine to actually help you complete the task is something that I see a lot of developers still today have that demand. And I think within the next 12 to 18 months, that's the area where I see the most amount of opportunity and demand.
What do you think's missing?
So I think that like one of the big challenges is just like someone needs to sort of have that like sort of breakthrough moment where they, you know, refashion their, you know, sort of entire buying flow to be very agent friendly. And I think you were seeing this with developer tools first, right? So it's like there are like website hosting platforms like render.com and stuff like that have been like, okay, this is easier than Vercel, and are trying to like take that market share. But like, I would like to buy airplane tickets this way. I would like to buy hotel rooms this way. I would like to buy groceries this way. It would be better. It would be cool. And the other big thing that is the consumer agent interfaces are also kind of not there for this yet. Like, you know, like what you can do inside of like a agent chat interface on your phone. Yes, you can do a lot if you've set up Ironclaw, OpenClaw, etc. You can do a lot, but like sort of the more refined consumer experiences are not there yet to like sort of enable all of this stuff. Like when you're talking to your agents on your phone, it doesn't have all your MCP servers and all of the stuff. It's like a tinier environment.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I actually think technology-wise, the pieces are kind of there. I do feel though that, you know, speaking of that, whether it's the harness, the construction of everything, how you put it together, that's partially its familiarity. I think it's also the fact that there's a lot of workarounds, like, you know, people have browser plugins and sort of, you know, basically just because they have to simulate that login because, you know, you can't go on trip.com basically through an API, you have to sort of simulate your entry point and that kind of stuff. That all of that stuff is part of the blocker. But I think, you know, you can, for instance, like someone's going to basically build a booking system. They already have done this before. You know, you can use Duffel API and you can integrate that stuff, right? But then the issue is if the agent makes a purchase, do you have a way in which that actually that was a wrong purchase, that could be frozen or that could be sort of controlled, right? So these are so the point is that these are all the same problems that we had as in human buying before, right? The mechanisms on how to deal with it are actually the same with agents. It just happens to be faster. And so I think we'll get there. Actually, I think we'll get there, you know, in light speed. So I think within this year, tops next year, actually we're all going to be sort of figuring that out. So I don't think it's really a technology. And the other point I want to point out is that I do think that unfortunately, actually blockchain rails on payments and transactions solves that in an incredible way. But there's a lot of, let's call it mental friction on blockchain because of its history and because of the associations with Trump and everything, as opposed to the pure technology. As a pure technology, it will accelerate, especially commerce, in an incredible way.
Lena, maybe you can start this one, but my question is, it feels like the map is kind of clear. Like if you imagine you're in a video game, it's pretty illuminated what's going to happen with the next few steps of building out this agentic economy. But what is in the dark? Like what's not illuminated? What are the big like design decisions, products to come out that are going to potentially reshape this rollout that we can't quite see around yet? Like what are you casting out into the future, wondering, you know, which way is it going to go still?
That's a good question. There are several things, I think. One, I think, is the really fundamental design of the payment infrastructure, because at this moment, all these like solutions we have has this assumption that we have a human in the loop in somewhere in this whole workflow. But when we don't really consider about when AI agents initiate the transaction or have like the whole agent to agent negotiating directly without any human intervention, and where human will be here. Will human will be completely out of this workflow, or will human remain as a supervisor for it? I think that's one thing that we need to sort out. And the other thing is the regulations, obviously, because especially like consumer protection regulators specific for agentic commerce, like activities. And then if we have a regulation for this, I think the whole industry will kind of change significantly. And like as e-commerce, I think it will like take time to actually make like agentic AI agents to really be part of the major individuals to all these commerce activities. But the tech is evolving faster than before, so I would say e-commerce has become a mass adoption. Like in 20 years, I think it will take only a decade, within a decade, to adopt all the AI agents commerce.
Who wants to take us home with the mysteries? What's yet to be revealed? What's not completely clear yet? The big decision points coming up.
Well, I mean, I think to me, there's plenty, and we don't have to talk about AGI because there's a lot of questions around that. But I would think the big thing for me is most of the world has no idea how this stuff works. So, we talk about agentic AI agents. Everyone still thinks, many, not everyone, but a lot of people still think AI, they're still in the ChatGPT mode of communicating with an AI agent. They don't understand the harness. They don't understand they need multiple agents. They don't understand how hallucinations work, right? And so that's one of the things that's stopping it, right? Because if you're not someone who understands how it works, you don't know how to make it work, then you get your first experience, and then after 1 or 2 weeks, it starts to do funny stuff, and then you move on, right? And then you end up going to Claude Cowork, or you end up going to Perplexity Computer, because they abstract all of that stuff nicely on the back, but then actually you don't get the full power of it. Right, so I think there's a literacy. I would say there's an agentic literacy gap that we have that I think is the biggest thing that we have to deal with.
Well, I think that's a great place to wrap. Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks, guys.